Tears for the Tear God, Salt for the Salt Throne, and Gas the Leaf Tribe.
Not long ago, I read an article about how Sadiq Khan and the brown author writing about him decided it was racist the way white people mispronounce their names. Like, haha, isn't it racist how people who don't speak our language say words in our language with a funny accent? So, right out the gate, Shri Paradkar, maybe? I'm about to tear your article a new one.
Hear the song of Slanesh. Hear this dirge and despair.
Who draws the line in the sand between crazy and credible, and who decides who is allowed to cross it? People with power and people with power. And I discussed this in my 2 previous videos, that the people who are obsessed with identity politics and identity dynamics are so obsessed because they are obsessed with power and nothing else. They just want power. She goes on to point out that the Toronto Star invited Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, for a chat with the editorial board. And clearly, judging by the headline, she's not happy about this. Bernier was once foreign affairs minister, had to quit over some sort of national security compromise. Maybe, I don't know the truth of it, but he is a handsome man, so, that checks out. Then he was the chief contender to the leadership of the Conservative Party, which he lost by a razor-thin margin. Now he's the man who heads a party linked through its supporters to far-right bigots, white supremacists, and even a neo-Nazi as a founding member, since removed. Now, they throw around the term far-right bigot and white supremacist like fucking confetti. And if there was a founding member who was a neo-Nazi, because they exist, I'm not denying that, but he was since removed, or she. I don't even know who this person is, to be honest. So I don't see the fucking problem. Bernier is open about his views on multiculturalism. It should be banned as a policy. It shouldn't. Multiculturalism is not a goal. It's a side effect of an effective, open Western democracy. He demands that immigrants integrate. With whom? Well, with Canada, but the West. Read white. We're going to circle back to that idea. He seeks a Canadian values test for new immigrants. Add ominous music and Sharia law here. Look, judging by her name, I would guess that this woman is Indian. And if she doesn't remember, maybe she's not old enough. The entire country, now called Pakistan, had to be separated from the rest of India because of Sharia law. Sharia law is so horrible that it deserves ominous music. Refugees. We can't save the world, so let's do very little. Well, I live in Toronto, where the Star is stationed. The refugees are flooding the homeless system. And I mean literally flooding to the point that they are spilling out onto the streets like the rest of our homeless. That I am seeing refugees panhandling on the fucking streets. We're not doing them any good. And I'm not talking about downtown. I'm talking about like Queensway and North Queen and Kipling and Steeles, Kipling and Rexdale. Who are we helping if they're just going to be homeless here? Seriously. Climate change, not an emergency. Well, hey, she hit that one on the head. That's 100% correct. Fuck Greta Thunberg. And, of course, she gets all race-baity with us. Many journalists of color. There are not that many of us in the newsroom. Well, you're in a country that's 87% white, so if the journalists of color are anywhere in and around 13+%, you're doing very well. Felt let down by our employer's decision. Yada, yada, yada. Yet we had to take on the emotionally exhausting task of organizing and speaking up to explain to our management why this impacted us so viscerally. why we don't fucking like it. And it's not because they're brown. They don't get that part. It's got nothing to do with them being people of color. It's got to do with them being fucking weak. That's all. They're weak people who don't appreciate the country in which they live. Columnists have wide latitude to express their opinions. This is my privilege. At least she acknowledges here that she does have some sort of privilege. And again, I'm going to circle back to that. It means I don't feel professionally compromised when I voice an opinion. No, you know what? If I were a woman of color, neither would I, because basically anytime anyone challenged me, I could say, you're a misogynist and a racist, and people would just back off. Doesn't matter how bad your ideas are. Indeed, it is my job to do so, but my colleagues who spoke up are not in the same position. Why? Is it because they're white? Would voicing their protest risk their reputations? Be seen not as a demand for justice. From what? From words? Word justice? But a lack of that much vaunted objectivity. And this here, she's going to circle back to that, and we're going to rip her a new one there too. Their positions are made more precarious by many of them being at entry-level ranks. Well, you know, the better they are, the higher they'll climb. It's got nothing to do with whether or not they agree with management, or it has to do with how good they are. But again, oh, I love this part. Would we do this with a flat earther? One of my colleagues asked our editor-in-chief in an email the evening before the chat. If there was a flat earth party running in the federal election that had a flat earth candidate in every riding, almost every riding in the fucking country, you're goddamn right you would. And you had fucking better, because that's something that's happening in the country, and you are supposed to be reporting the happenings in the country. Why do I have to explain this to a professional fucking journalist? Christ. Now, at this point in the article, she really starts to show herself, not as an identitarian activist, but as an authoritarian. At the Star, the newsroom is separate from the editorial board, which means the decision to invite or disinvite Bernier wasn't the editor's to make. From a reader perspective, that's a distinction without a difference. Stories from both the board and the newsroom appear on the same platforms, and editors of both ultimately report to the same publisher. Now, this statement that from a reader's perspective, it is a distinction without difference, can only be true if you believe your readers are stupid. I know the difference between objective reporting or attempted objective reporting. Obviously, everyone's bias gets injected, but they try. And I know the difference between that and opinion pieces like this. I can smell it right away. In the headline, the way it's framed, the writing, I know that, okay? It's a distinction with a huge difference, and I am a smart enough person to tell. So clearly, she thinks people are too stupid to make their own decisions, and she should have control over them. She and, you know, the rest of these ridiculous authoritarian, identitarian leftists. Platforming does not defeat ideas. If there is anything U.S. President Donald Trump is a shining example of, it is the danger of free speech arguments that validate hate speech and the failure of the concept of sunlight as a great disinfectant of bad ideas. Again, I think this is terribly wrong. I think that her hate speech against white people and Western nations shouldn't be deplatformed. That the free speech argument includes her speech, and I want her stuff as public as possible, because if I'm doing a bad job of articulating the arguments and tearing her article a new one, someone else will. Oh, I know they will, because I know that this is a horrible, horrible position That's not grounded in reality. And I find this part interesting because it seems like an attempt to delegitimize people, but it seems to me more like her own self-aggrandizement. All platforming does is legitimize the speaker. And when that speaker is polished or perceived by the audience as authentic, the platform elevates their stature. Well, this woman is polished and perceived by, I'm sure, her own audience as authentic. But the platform does nothing, in my eyes, to elevate her stature. In fact, it actually diminishes her by a great deal, because this is a very terrible, stupid position. So the platform doesn't actually aid her in any way, except for the fact that it puts her opinion in the public sphere. And in that way is a detriment to her, because she is wrong, and fools like me can drink a half a bottle of scotch and still prove it, and better men than I will really just tear this apart. So this is clearly wrong. In his conversation with the Star's editorial board, Bernier denied his ideology was anti-Muslim. You know what? I'm not anti-Muslim. I am anti-Islam. I think the same way I'm anti-communism. The ideology in and of itself is bad. If you're a Muslim person and you don't actually follow the ideology to its extreme conclusions, then I don't care. But the ideology, I'm not for it. Not for a fucking second. He said things like, I'm not against diversity. I'm against more and more and more diversity. Yeah, so am I. Diversity is, at best, a side effect of a functional Western nation. It's not a goal. It shouldn't be. If things work properly, it'll just happen. He fended off in the softest terms his churlish attack on 16-year-old climate change activist Greta Thunberg, in which he called her mentally unstable, saying, "Bitch is literally suicidal over climate change." Yeah, she's mentally fucking unstable. Also, her parents are both artists, and that does not ever do well for children. Christ. The event was open to anyone in the newsroom. We know how these discussions unfold. This is why many of us journalists of color... What about, journalists? Watch that Bill Maher piece. Decided not to participate in any capacity, neither to question Bernier nor to work behind the scenes to produce live video. And this is one of those things that's very telling. They didn't question Bernier. They think they're taking a high road, but the fact is, if Bernier's ideas were bad, they would be happy to confront him because they would be able to defeat him. Now, I'm not very good at this, and I'm drunk as all shit, but I still feel confident enough to attack these ideas because I know they're bad. I'm not going to not engage because I think they don't deserve a platform. That's got nothing to do with it. I am confident these ideas are bad, and they will be defeated. If not by me, then by somebody. And I think if Shri and the other journalists of color felt confident that Bernier's ideas were that bad, they would have approached and questioned. And that would have been the end of him. I find this to be another quite interesting statement, that we know that racism is instituted with or without Bernier. We work despite it. Racism exists among mainstream politicians. It exists in the structures and policies and institutions around us. Every time I hear a successful woman of color or an Andre Demise, right, who works for a big company and is in Canadian terms, wealthy and prolific, and they're good at what they do, and they've made themselves a life spewing their bullshit, saying that The institution is racist against them. All I hear is, if it wasn't for you filthy white people, I'd be so much more successful than I am. Like, what a fucking asshole. Are you fucking kidding me? You worked hard at what you do, and you are making a living doing it. You're successful. You are literally as successful as you've earned. No more and no less. That's it. Deal with it. Holy fuck. But we didn't want to be part of a discussion that Bernier could and did frame in agree to disagree terms. No, yeah, you wouldn't take part in because you would agree to disagree, but he would have smoked you publicly. Bernier's ideologies are not abstract level ideas for us, not mere disagreements that can be debated in a civilized fashion. Let's debate, then have a drink, old chap. They have real-world consequences. Yes, they would have real-world consequences. You would be so thoroughly debunked by publicly challenging the man that no one would hire you anymore. Unless, of course, you change your tack, and I don't think you actually have the capacity to. So, yeah, for all your success, for all your merit, if you don't continue to work hard, yeah, you'd lose your shit against this man. Absolutely. This is us, our children, our fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers being threatened by people who feel emboldened by Bernier's rhetoric, whether or not he intends it. The non-Muslims among us may not be the primary targets, but there is no scope for complacence. The laser pointer swings fast. You know what? The laser pointer has been on white people pointed by you for like a decade now. It's really fucking gross that you're on the attack. It is so fucking ridiculous to hear people saying you're either with us or against us. Also, you're divisive and stop targeting me while they target all the fucking white people. Oh my god. If it wasn't so funny, it would be fucking sad. We've seen time and again individual white supremacists attacking Sikhs and Hindus, mistaking them for being Muslim. Now, I actually haven't seen this. I haven't seen articles about this. If they're there, hey, hit me up. I don't doubt it happens. I doubt it happens the way Shri is suggesting it does. We have seen hate crimes against black people. You know what we don't see in Canada? We don't see hate crimes against white people. You know why that is? It's not because hate crimes against white people don't happen. It's because when an indigenous woman shouts, "I hate white people," and punches a white woman in the mouth, knocking out one of her teeth, the judge claims that's not a hate crime. That's a true story. I'm going to try and find that article and link it here because it is fucking ridiculous. We know what Bernier followers, the soldiers of Odin and Pegida, for instance, I actually don't know that soldiers of Odin and Pegida are in fact racist. They're just anti-multiculturalism and mass immigration, and so am I. So, say about our skin colors, our cultures, who's our, right? Because Indians and Pakistanis are not the same culture. Indians and, the variegated Arabs are not the same culture. So what the fuck are you talking about? Our cultures. You have a culture. They have many different cultures, some of which are fucking gross. So maybe you shouldn't include yourself. You shouldn't group yourself with those people. We know that while he says he isn't racist and touts the meaningless idea of having people of color in his party as proof, his words continue to be a clarion call to those seeking to bridge the far right and the mainstream. Look, I've heard this before. Oh, you're not racist because you have black friends? That's not the argument. The argument isn't that Maxime Bernier allows people of color, or that I have friends of color. The argument is that if I was those things that you claim that I am, if Maxime Bernier was those things that you claim that he is, people of color wouldn't join his fucking party. and people of color wouldn't have me as a friend. You fucking asshole. What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my god. And if he truly believes they don't represent his views, he might find it worth reflecting upon why they're so attracted to his party. They're attracted to his party for the same reason that the Browns and the Jews and the gays are attracted to his party. Because it's a platform that makes fucking sense. Alright, so, you know, if white supremacists think 2 plus 2 is 4, well, on that we agree, and apparently Maxime Bernier's platform is so solid that you have black people and Indian people and Jewish people and gay people and white fucking supremacists all going, yeah, I can get on board with that. So he seems like a solid unifying force between all of these groups that, according to Shri, shouldn't get along. What a fucking dickhead, seriously. Even among those of us who want to integrate, in other words, adhere to standards of whiteness, not indigeneity, we can change our clothes, we can change our lifestyles, we can change our accents. We cannot peel off our skins. Literally none of that are the things that people are asking immigrants to integrate. None of it. None of it. And talking about indigeneity versus whiteness, the indigenous people didn't have a fucking nation. Most of them were nomadic. All right. And the ones that weren't had just literally discovered farming and had no horses to pull their plows. They weren't going anywhere fast. If everything they said was true about white countries, read Western, no people of color would want to immigrate here. The same way that if Maxime Bernier was a racist, no person of color would want to join his party. And if I was a racist, no person of color would have me as a friend. You fucking idiot. What the fuck is wrong with you? By platforming Bernier, all the Star and other media do is further bridge the gap between the far right and the mainstream. Are these the Canadian values of which we are proud? Professional fucking columnist just ended an entire article with a preposition. I get it like, I'm such a Nazi. A grammar Nazi. In common parlance, it happens. You end sentences with prepositions. You talk yourself into a corner, and it just comes out. There it was. When you have time to edit, there is no fucking excuse for this. And yes, these are values of which we are proud. All right, that we don't need you to change your accent or your clothes or even your lifestyle, at least to a degree. We just need you to accept that when 300 plus people are running in a national election, the leader of that party deserves a platform. He deserves to be heard. Just like you do. But if you're too chicken to talk to him directly, well, then that tells me a lot more about you than it does about me.
Ours is the song of victory.
Relevant links to shit I said in the description. Maybe. I'm Irving Twin.
Slaanesh is with
Like,
us.
subscribe, or don't. It's a free country. At least it used to be.
They would silence us.